Hey, Paul here again, and in this video I'm going to give you 6 reasons why your heirs will fight over your estate and what you can do to minimize the possibility that they'll fight. Okay, no secret, I think it was Ann Landers, Dear Abby, one of them said if you really want to get to know someone, share an inheritance with them. You've all heard of the estates that have blown up after somebody died. I'm going to give you 6 reasons. Probably the 6th reason that I give you is the most critical one, so hang on until the end and let me start with number 1. So the number 1 reason why heirs fight is because after someone dies, one or more of the heirs are surprised. And when they're surprised, either sometimes people are pleasantly surprised and sometimes people are unpleasantly surprised. So it's those ones who are unpleasantly surprised that maybe they're saying to themselves, I didn't know, Dad was going to leave me so little, or Dad told me he was going to leave me his car or his house. And the legal documents say otherwise, and what Dad said is irrelevant. And so when heirs are unpleasantly surprised, they typically get uncooperative, and now they refuse to sign paperwork, they refuse to engage in conversations and in planning that's necessary to settle estates. So number 1 is when heirs are surprised. Number 2, the number 2 reason why your heirs may fight is they don't have a relationship. So sometimes Dad dies, one of the children starts talking to me, haven't talked to my brother in 10 years, I don't know where he is, or sometimes husband will die, his wife will come in, I don't get along with my stepchildren, or one of my stepchildren is very nice, one I don't talk too much, and one just hates me. And so really not much you can do about the fact that your heirs don't have a relationship. It's probably not your job to make sure they have a relationship, but what can you do to avoid that problem? Potentially, maybe the no contest clause that say if anyone disputes the validity or contests the will, they get nothing. Now, you have to look in your state, and the validity of those no contest clauses can be questioned, so it's a state-by-state matter. The 3rd reason your heirs may fight, quite frankly, is greed. And I've seen it where sometimes certain parties to an estate settlement, they can legally be greedy, but it ends up with a lot of animosity and ill will. So let me give an example. Let's say Dad died and all he had was $1 million in an account, and his will left everything to his 4 children equally. And when he wrote his will, he was told he had to name an executor. He named his oldest child, his oldest son, as his executor. So he dies, the son's the executor. The only job is to divide that $1 million account up 4 ways, $250,000 each, simple enough. However, that oldest child who was named as the executor, maybe the only reason he was named is because he's the oldest, realizes that as an executor, he's entitled to a fee. And in our state, that fee is 2.5% of the assets. So that son says, that's pretty good. I'll take my $25,000 off the top, and then me and my 3 other siblings will split the rest. And so that that can create some animosity, ill will that never goes away. And so the way to combat that problem is maybe 2 things. 1, you can provide in your legal documents that the executor is not entitled to compensation. Or 2, maybe talk to your executor in advance and tell them what your expectations are about executor compensation and whether you feel like they should accept it or whether they should waive that compensation. So greed is another area where heirs will fight. A 4th reason why your heirs will fight is because your estate legal documents may be vague, ambiguous, or flat out, incorrect, or not an accurate expression of your wishes. That might be your fault, that might not be your fault, it might be the attorney's fault, but I'm not trying to lay blame here, but it is just one of the reasons your heirs may fight. Now, generally, when I see heirs fighting over the content of the will or the legal documents, it's because when you wrote your will or trust or whatever it is, Oftentimes people try to be really more specific than they really should or need to, and it does create that ambiguity on the back end. So for example, if dad has a will or trust and he says, when I die, I want everything I have divided up among my 3 children equally. Well, that's not really vague or ambiguous or subject to different interpretation. But if dad, wants to get really, really specific and says, if I'm living in this house when I die, then I want my wife to be able to live in it until she either dies or remarries or she lives with someone. And then when that occurs, I want so-and-so to be able to kick her out, and then so-and-so can live there, and so-and-so is responsible for the utilities. And then when it sells, these people can get $1,000 a month from the sale, and let's adjust that amount that they'll get from the sale each year based on some cost of living adjustment. Now you got real specific, and there's lots of potential for arguments about the interpretation of all of that. So generally, kind of the simpler you keep the estate legal documents, the less concern there is about people fighting over the interpretation, ambiguity of the legal documents. All right, Number 5 reason your heirs will fight is because the participants in the settlement of your estate are not going to follow the rules. How many times has somebody come into my office, maybe 3 weeks after a spouse, parent, loved one died, and said, Paul, here's what happened. Dad passed away the day after Dad died. My sister, she rolled up into his house. She had a key. She took out all of the stuff that she wanted. And now, she has it. We don't even know where any of the stuff is. We were supposed to divide up all that stuff. Now there's none of that stuff is left. Or when Dad died, my sister was on his bank account as a signer, so she immediately moved a bunch of the funds from Dad's account into her account. Yeah, she said she was going to use it for the funeral. I don't know what she's doing with it, but that seems wrong. So there's rules that are supposed to be followed when somebody dies as to what to do with their money, and how it gets collected, and then how it gets dispersed to the heirs, to the beneficiaries. So when people don't follow those rules, it causes people to get stressed, and somebody's saying, well, if my sister didn't do this right, then what else is she not doing right? There's going to be problems here. Okay, so again, maybe some communication with the family ahead of time about what your expectations are. Maybe even just some written communication that you put with your paperwork. Maybe, but they may not see that paperwork until days or weeks after you pass away. So some communication can help there. And then that leads me to the 6th and most likely reason your heirs will fight over your estate is when there's not real clear and open and transparent communication immediately after you pass away. So, when Dad dies and brother calls me and he's like, I think my sister's in charge of settling my dad's estate. I haven't heard from her in weeks or months. She doesn't communicate what she's doing with Dad's money. I got no idea what's going on. She's got a lawyer. I've never talked to the lawyer. When there's no communication immediately after a death, people start suspecting the worst because there's money involved, and that creates problems. And that suspicion creates stress among those those surviving participants or those remaining participants in the estate settlement. Really, really, really key here is if you're a participant in an estate settlement, I wanna strongly encourage you to strongly encourage the other participants to get in a room together, perhaps with an attorney or somebody who can help you kind of moderate a discussion. But I've seen many, many, many estate disputes avoided when, a week after Dad dies, the surviving wife and the 4 kids all get together in a conference room, and we just hash it out. So, something like, here's the will, here's what it says, Here's to the best of our knowledge what the assets are. Here's how things will play out from here. Does anybody have any concerns that we need to address about any of that? Because now is the time to address it, not 4 months down the road, and it's going to cause things to delay another year. If anybody has any concerns about anything, we all need to know about it now so we can resolve it. Create a plan, a detailed plan of every step that will take place from here until this estate is settled. Put that in writing, communicate it clearly. There's never any surprises. Everything is open and transparent. And if there's any kind of email that addresses this stuff, it goes to everybody. If there's a reply to the email, it's replied to everybody. If some substantive issue comes up while the estate is being settled, as is often the case, then we all got to get together, or we all got to get together on the conference call and discuss it. And that way, when all of the heirs know that everything's out in the open, there's no secrets, everything's transparent, you just see all of the heirs, you see their shoulders go down, and they get this feeling that, okay, there's no funny business going on. All my questions are getting answered. All my concerns are getting addressed, and we're going to be able to get through this thing. So that communication among the participants really right after the death, and I realize families have to take care of funeral arrangements and that stuff, and so when I say right after the death, I don't mean the next day, although sometimes it is, but before people start getting suspicious that somebody's doing something wrong, before that time, that's a great time to get all of the participants together. Even if they aren't real fond of each other, that communication can go a long way to making what would otherwise be an estate settlement that could take 3 or 4 years, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, into an estate settlement that might take weeks or months with minimal expense and without further damaged relationships. Okay, so there's your 6 reasons why your heirs will fight, along with what to do about it. Hope that helps. We'll see you on the next video. I'm Paul Rabalais. Y'all take care.